There was a man who had everything: money, power, a mansion by the sea. He never had to worry about bills or struggles. His days were filled with luxury, expensive cars, designer clothes, and private jets. Life was good for him, or so he thought. Every morning, he would wake up to the sound of his personal assistant's voice, asking if he needed anything. His breakfast was prepared for him, his clothes pressed and ready. He didn't think twice about what it took to live this way, and he certainly didn't think about people who lived any differently. To him, people who were struggling were just lazy. They didn't work hard enough. If they wanted something better, they should have made better choices, right? That's how the rich man saw the world. Everyone was either born into success, or they earned it. And if you didn't have it, it was your own fault. Simple as that. But life, as he would soon learn, has a way of surprising even the most self-assured. One chilly afternoon, as the rich man was returning home from a business meeting, he saw him, the homeless man, sitting on the corner near his mansion. The man looked tired, his clothes were torn, and his face was weathered by years of hardship. His hair was long and unkempt, and his eyes were filled with exhaustion. But what caught the rich man's eye was the worn-out military jacket he wore. It was faded and frayed at the edges, with a patch that seemed old and forgotten. The homeless man was holding a cardboard sign. It read, "Veteran, please help." The rich man slowed his car as he passed by. For a brief moment he noticed the man's eyes, tired yet hopeful. But he didn't stop. He never did. There were too many people like him, begging for money, pretending to be something they weren't. And this man, well, he seemed no different. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and sped up, pushing the thought out of his mind. Later that day, as he sat in his living room with a glass of wine, the man appeared again. And again. Each time standing at the same spot, holding the same sign. The rich man could feel his irritation growing. He had things to do, places to be. Why couldn't this man just go away? Why can't they just get a job? He muttered under his breath, staring out the window. But the man didn't leave. The homeless man didn't give up. Day after day he stood on that corner, holding his sign. He never moved, never asked for more than what he needed. And each time the rich man saw him, he grew more and more irritated. Why doesn't he just leave? The rich man thought to himself. He's just making a scene out here. Doesn't he realize people have things to do? Each morning, as the rich man drove out of his mansion, the homeless man would be there, standing silently with his sign. Sometimes he would look up, their eyes meeting for just a moment. But the rich man would always look away, pretending not to notice. One evening, after a long day at work, the rich man drove home, his thoughts filled with business deals and upcoming events. When he passed the corner, he saw the same tired figure. The man raised his sign slightly higher, as if hoping this time would be different. The rich man was fed up. He slammed the brakes and rolled down his window. "Are you really going to do this every single day?" he shouted. "What do you want from me?" The homeless man didn't answer right away. He just stood there, looking up with a quiet dignity. Finally he spoke. "I'm a veteran," he said, his voice raspy. "I fought for this country, and now I have nothing. I'm asking for help, just a little kindness." The rich man stared at him, his anger rising. "Get a job," he snapped before rolling up the window and driving away. The man was still standing there, but this time something in the rich man's mind stirred. For just a brief second, he felt a flicker of doubt. Was this man really just another beggar? Or was there more to his story? The rich man didn't think much about the homeless veteran after that day. Life went on. He buried himself in his meetings, dinners, and the luxury of his routine. But the man on the corner was still there. Day after day. Then, one afternoon, as the rich man was having coffee with a friend at a nearby cafe, the conversation shifted unexpectedly. "You know," his friend said, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret, "that man who's been standing by your mansion, he's not just some random beggar." The rich man paused, looking up. "What do you mean?" he asked, confused. "He's a war hero," the friend continued. "He served in Vietnam, got several medals, he came back, and no one really took care of him. Ended up on the streets, but he's not just anyone." The rich man felt a strange sensation in his chest. He had never considered that the homeless man might have a deeper story. "Are you sure?" the rich man asked, frowning. "Yes. He's been through a lot. "It's a sad story," his friend said. "He gave his youth to fight for this country, and now, no one seems to care." The words hit the rich man harder than he expected. The veteran wasn't just a beggar after all. He wasn't just someone asking for money, he had once been a hero. For the first time, the rich man felt something other than annoyance. Guilt. It lingered in the back of his mind, like a weight he couldn't shake off. The rich man couldn't stop thinking about the homeless veteran. The idea of him being a war hero kept swirling in his mind, and no matter how hard he tried to push it away, the thought wouldn't leave him. He began questioning everything. Why had he refused to help this man? What if he had been wrong all along? He had judged the veteran based on his appearance, dismissing him as just another person too lazy to work. But now, the rich man saw the situation in a new light. He sat in his mansion late that night, staring out the window. The cold wind blew outside, but inside, his thoughts were warm with guilt. He had everything: comfort, wealth, success. And yet, he had ignored someone who had once fought for the freedom he enjoyed every single day. The next morning, the rich man made his way out of the mansion again, but this time his heart was different. His car slowed as he passed the corner where the veteran always stood. And there he was, just like every other day, still wearing his old jacket, still holding his sign. This time the rich man didn't just drive by. He stopped the car, he rolled down the window, but he didn't shout. He didn't get angry. Instead, he looked at the man, really looked at him. The homeless veteran stood there, eyes meeting his, but this time there was no judgment in the rich man's gaze. Only curiosity, and maybe a little shame. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about how much time he was wasting. He wasn't thinking about the business deals or the meetings. He was thinking about the life the veteran had lived, the things he had sacrificed. And somehow, that made all the difference. The rich man took a deep breath, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He knew what he had to do, even if it felt awkward. Slowly, he opened the car door and stepped out. The homeless veteran was still standing there, his sign held loosely in his hands. The moment the rich man approached, the veteran straightened up, his tired eyes watching him carefully. I'm sorry," the rich man began, his voice soft. "I've been wrong. I didn't know who you were. I shouldn't have judged you." The veteran didn't say anything at first. He just looked at him with a quiet understanding, as though he had heard these words before. "I want to help," the rich man continued, his words coming faster now. "Not just with money, but with a chance to get back on your feet. I have a guest house. You could stay there. I'll make sure you get the care you need. A job, if that's what you want. Whatever it takes." The homeless man's expression didn't change much. His face was weathered, but his eyes, though tired, seemed to hold a kind of wisdom that made the rich man feel small. "No one's ever offered me anything like that," the veteran said quietly, his voice rough from years of living on the streets. The rich man swallowed, feeling a lump in his throat. "I know, but I'm offering now. I can't undo the past, but I can try to make it right. Will you let me help?" The veteran stood still for a moment, as if considering the offer. Finally he nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll take it." And just like that, the rich man realized that this was more than about giving someone a place to stay. It was about giving someone their dignity back. Something he had never understood before. Over the next few weeks, the rich man did everything he could to help the veteran adjust to his new life. The guest house was comfortable, though simple. The veteran, who introduced himself as Jack, settled in quietly, unsure of where to begin. At first there was an awkward silence between them. The rich man, whose name was Thomas, wasn't sure how to approach the situation. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how to bridge the gap between their worlds. But one evening, as they sat on the porch of the guest house, Jack started talking. Slowly at first, but then the words began to flow. He talked about his time in the military, the battles he had fought, the friends he had lost. He spoke of the horrors he had witnessed and the long years of struggle after he returned home. Jack had been forgotten by most, left to face the pain and the loneliness on his own. Thomas listened, really listened for the first time. He heard stories of bravery and sacrifice that he had never imagined. He heard about the horrors of war, about the toll it took on Jack's mind and body. Jack spoke of how hard it had been to readjust to civilian life, how the world moved on while he was stuck in the past. Thomas realized just how little he had understood about the struggles faced by veterans. He had thought that people who were homeless had simply given up, but Jack's story, his experiences, proved him wrong. Jack hadn't given up. He had survived things that most people couldn't even begin to imagine. The more Thomas learned, the more he wanted to help. He wasn't just giving Jack a roof over his head. He was offering him something far more important, a chance to heal, a chance to live again. And Jack, for the first time in a long while, felt seen. As the weeks passed, Thomas began to understand more than he ever thought possible. His eyes were open to a world he had ignored for too long. He realized that people like Jack weren't just victims of bad luck. They were survivors. Survivors of war, of broken systems, and of the harshness of life. The conversations with Jack became more meaningful. Thomas found himself questioning his own beliefs, his own assumptions. He had always believed that success was earned, that those who had money deserved it. But now he saw that life wasn't so simple. Sometimes the hardest battles were fought in silence, without recognition. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jack said something that stuck with Thomas. "I didn't ask for this," Jack said quietly. "I didn't ask for the war, or for the life I've lived. But here I am, still standing, still trying." Thomas nodded, his mind racing with thoughts. He had lived a life full of comfort, but Jack's resilience was something he had never fully appreciated before. He realized that this wasn't just about helping Jack, it was about changing himself. About seeing people for who they truly were, beyond their circumstances, beyond the labels society put on them. It was a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his life.